Hi, I'm Tom with a list of interesting things, and welcome back to the Interesting Book Club. Today we have another sample audio chapter from my book, titled Water Pressure, possibly subtitled Nothing Bad Happens at the Bottom of the Sea. Without further ado, here we go. Chapter 5. Voices. Transcript of interview with Ian James, sous chef aboard Oceanographic and Geographic Mining and Exploration Station, C. Revelry washed through the mess hall like water burst from the ceiling. It was maybe 2200 hours, and I sat with my feet up after a long first day back. Cortez, Ned, Liam, Lord, and I were playing poker, but I'd already lost $250, so I was good to be out. Lord was pretty new on the station at the time, and I gathered it was his first time playing Hold'em or maybe any card game. He'd lost a ton of money to Liam out bluffing him or Cortez cheating, but he took it in stride. He was drinking like it was the last day on Earth, but having a great time anyway. I'd stopped paying attention when Liam and Cortez got in each other's faces about a misdeal. I just relaxed and watched the crowd. Kyle and Roland were making out in the corner, and Evans was trashed, nearly passed out against the back wall. Rick was playing another sailing tune on her accordion, and Lydia was doing some accompaniment. There was a game of chess going on in one corner, a political argument in another, and the drinks were flowing like it was a great funeral. Everyone was in high spirits. Arabelle was up against one wall, staring into her glass. Her forehead was a worried nest of wrinkles, and her eyebrows were contracted in thought. I tossed my last few chips in the pile and stood. I left the game behind and weaved my way through the crowd. I passed Vicar, who was DJing out of his laptop, and Lydia, who was dancing on Hillenberg way more provocatively than she probably should have been. I slipped behind the bar and got a pair of deep waters, then sat down across from Arabelle. She barely seemed to notice me and only reacted when I pushed the bottle under her nose. She took it without looking at me. I looked at the ceiling with my hands behind my head. "So, what's going on?" I asked. She uncapped it on the table edge and took a swig. In apparent frustration, she ran a hand through her short golden hair. She peered blearily at the back of the bottle. "You know, this is a biodegradable bottle," she said, frowning at the label. "We can throw this out of the airlock, and it'll be gone in 3 months. It's nothing more than sugar and barley." I nodded. I'd been one of the ones to push for the new bottles for the station. "Everything dissolves down here, Ian, after a while," she continued. "Every scrap of plastic, every piece of rock. Sooner or later, it'll all be dust." I glanced at her. She was staring through her bottle, not really seeing it. She picked at the kraken on the label. "The odds of finding anything, literally anything down here, are astronomical," said Arabelle, gripping her bottle so hard her fingertips were colorless. "It's not finding a needle in a haystack. It's finding a needle in a desert. It's finding a needle in the Sahara when you know the needle is buried somewhere 8 meters down and you can't breathe." She took another drink. Her eyebrows contracted tighter and she stared through the bottle. "But we've found so many needles that it's become commonplace." She pulled something out of her pocket. A flake of crystal, maybe an inch long, barely visible in the corner, were scraps of writing. "So how is it that we have any artifacts at all?" I was silent for a moment, and she looked at me. Her eyes were narrow and storm gray, but it was like she didn't even see me. She drained her beer. "Why are we here?" I thought about answering, but I kept silent. I felt worry and doubt creep into the corners of my jaw. Arabelle shrugged and stood. Her hand passed over the obsidian flake and it was gone. She deftly threw her bottle into the recycling bin and walked away quite steadily, out into the darkened hall. I pondered her words for a long time before standing, somewhat less steadily. By 23:30, the party was starting to wind down, and I was feeling pretty sober. Kyle and Roland had left, and I didn't see Evans. Rick had gotten drunk and was showing Liam pictures of her youngest. The poker game had finished, and it was just Cortez left, chatting with Little. I started clearing up, trying not to wobble too much. I got the bottles collected and put into the dissolution box, and when I was coming back out, Lord almost fell into me. Ian. His voice was deep and smooth and slurred with drink. Did you know we are at the bottom of the ocean? He was 6'4", but I'm not a small guy. I caught him as he was going down and got under his arm. I steadied myself against a table and held him upright. Guy must have been 250 pounds. "Yeah, Marcus, I know we're at the bottom of the ocean," I said, trying to keep my knees from buckling. I felt some of the weight lift and looked to my left to see a very drunk Rick hoisting him up by his other side. She was very short, so she had to grip him by the waist and lift, but it helped. "How did we even get here?" Lord mused. "Rick, how did you get here?" "Let's get you to bed, kid," said Rick, a smile on her heart-shaped face. Together, Rick and I shuffled toward the door. Cortez looked over, mildly interested, and Little asked if we needed help. Rick said we had it covered, and we half-carried, half-dragged Lord out into the white hallway, whose bright halogen strips had been dimmed for the evening. "Rick, we're off the clock, so is it okay for me to tell you you're hot now?" said Lord thickly. Rick readjusted her grip under his arm, digging her elbow into his ribs while she did so. "No, Marcus, I'm married and I have 3 kids. She heaved again, "and you're 20 years old." Lord brightened up quite a bit at these words. He stood up and looked at Rick with a broad and honest smile. "No," he said, his voice thick with drink and enthusiasm. "I'm 21. I turned 21 2 weeks ago." He broke away from both of us as we got through the first airlock, staring up through the glass ceiling. "Christian says when I get back up, we're going to go to all his favorite bars." His face fell slightly. "I miss him. I miss my fiancée, too. I miss all of them. I haven't seen my mom in a year. I can't sleep down here." Rick and I looked at each other as he stared out into the dark. His dark eyes were wide, and they reflected the halogen lights. Rick's voice was steady when she spoke. "I know you miss your family, Marcus. I do too. But it's a good job." She reached up high and put a hand on Lord's shoulder. His eyes misted slightly as he stared through the obsidian glass. Rick continued. "And when you're done here, I'm sure you'll see what a great experience it was." Lord wavered in the center of the intersection between the airlocks. "Nobody likes me down here, and I'm so tired all the time. I can't sleep." His jaw tightened and tears welled in the corners of his eyes. "I want to go home." "We like you, Marcus," I said, and I think I meant it. "We're glad to have you on the team." Rick nodded emphatically, wobbling slightly as she did. "I've never met a better engineer, and the way you talk about your family makes me sure they miss you just as much." She glanced at me, then back at Lord. Then she patted him on his arm. "Say, why don't you spend some time with me and Ian and Cortez? You should come hang out with us next time we have one of our low-stakes games." Lord shrugged, his eyes still on the deep. I nodded and gripped Lord by the shoulder. "Absolutely. We'd love to have you." He looked a little less down. "And as for trouble sleeping, with this much alcohol in your body, I'd be more worried about waking up in the morning." Rick laughed and Lord gave a watery smile. He let out a hearty sniff and pulled his eyes away from the swallowing dark. "Okay, yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'll come next time." I put my arm around his shoulders and Rick put her arm around his waist, and the two of us guided him back to crew quarters. "Tomorrow after work," said Rick. "I know your schedule, so don't skip out on us." We got to C-201 over on the eastern side, bordering the vehicle bay. They were nice quarters, with one hell of a view looking out over the trench, but they were given to a lot of rookies a lot of the time, because the walls vibrated every time a submersible was launched. No wonder he couldn't sleep. Lord fumbled for his keycard and the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The room looked like it could have belonged to a college sophomore. There was a vintage Star Wars poster on one wall and a Pulp Fiction poster on the other, both stuck up with Scotch tape. There was a high school football award on a very cluttered dresser, and there were clothes on the floor a couple inches deep. There was a bed with a big floofy comforter against the back wall. The bed sat beneath a wide window that would have overlooked the trench if it wasn't masked by the dust storm. I tossed Lord down on the big puffy blanket, and he flopped backwards, kicking off his shoes unceremoniously. His eyes drifted closed almost at once. His forehead knit. "The room's spinning. It doesn't usually do that." Rick threw the blanket over him and put his shoes by the door. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked out the window into the storm. The room was quiet except for the dust striking against the hull, hissing like a TV left between stations. "We're gonna be okay, right?" he asked. His deep voice was heavy, and his face looked older than it should have. Rick and I looked at each other again, and then I said, "Yeah, it'll all work out, kid. Now get some sleep." But Lord didn't answer. Soft snores sang from where he slumbered, as the door sealed with a pneumatic hiss. This concludes Chapter 5. Thank you for listening, and as always, I hope you remember to subscribe to stay up to date on this and all the most interesting things. If you want to see more things like this, please let me know. And until next time, be like water pressure. Enigmatic and a little unsettling. At least I hope so. And above all, be interesting. I'll see you next time.